And welcome back. I'm Sheldon McLeod. This is Thinking Out Loud, presented to you on SaltWire. And I was called for jury duty once in my life. I received notification. I just happened to be out of town. I was not going to be available. I'm not sure whatever happened. I don't know what the case was. There are certain things in society that are considered civic duties: paying your taxes, voting, and serving when they call for you to do jury duty. And this is something that's been very much a passion project for someone who had been given that task by society not too many years ago. And it has evolved into something that's known as the Canadian Juries Commission. And they are working towards helping Canadians find support within their own circles. And it's something that I've spoken to in the past. I've spoken with the president and CEO of the Canadian Juries Commission, and we've got Mark Farrant Mark Farrant here with us to talk about it. Mark, thank you. It's so nice to see you, and it's not hard to tell I had a couple of days off. How are things?
Things are great. It's great to be with you, Sheldon.
And a commission. People don't think of a commission as something that has potential to impact their daily lives. Tell me a little bit, first of all, where this all came from. Well,
it goes back to my appearance and the appearance of other jurors as part of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights investigation into jury duty and juror mental health back in 2017. And they produced a landmark report with 11 recommendations. Some of those recommendations did materialize into legislation. But as you probably know, well-meaning reports can sit there and lose traction. And we didn't want to see that happen. So I established the Canadian Juries Commission to really take it upon ourselves in some ways to bring some of those recommendations to light and carry them forward into actual programs as opposed to just policy recommendations.
We just went through, it was a Jury Appreciation Week in Canada, national recognition of that. There's some legislation that recently was passed to help for that area of support. And I think it would be troubling to most people to know that you may end up in that situation, you're called for jury duty, and that it's very difficult to find the supports that don't violate the way that the system is set up. And what can you tell me about this vision of the pilot project and what you would like to see happen right across this country?
We heard from jurors firsthand, and I have that own lived experience myself as a former juror in a very difficult trial that left me with post-traumatic stress disorder after I served. But we heard when we conducted national focus groups from jurors who really wanted the opportunity to access the mental health system, but also stress that speaking to somebody who understands the experience, perhaps another juror who has gone through something similar, understands the stresses and understands the magnitude of what it is to be a juror in some cases, and being able to talk to them after the trial to gain some support. And so that really was the birth of our pilot program, which is twofold: to provide jury duty peer support. And peer support is something that has existed in some countries for a long time. The United Kingdom is one of the leaders in peer support. It was one of the recommendations of the Mental Health Commission of Canada to establish peer support programs for veterans, for active military, for first responders. And those programs have been seeded and are working very well. And we took that note as well to really create this program as something meaningful for jurors after their service.
And as an accused has, the right to be judged by a jury of their peers, are we talking that support network would be that same jury, those same people who would be able to communicate with each other, or are we talking a much bigger program than that?
It's a bigger program than that. So we have trained a group of former jurors in peer support. So they've taken extensive training through a subject matter expert in the facets of peer support. And again, we have to stress that this isn't therapy. So peer support isn't therapy. It is support, empathy, listening, and hope. So it doesn't follow psychological practices necessarily, but again, it's a complement to mental health programs, and obviously it is designed to improve one's mental health, to allow you to talk about the experience and open up. Our program is still bound by the jury secrecy rule because, as you mentioned in your introduction, there was an amendment to the criminal code passed Bill S-206, which is now law, that allows jurors to speak openly with a therapist about all aspects of the trial, including deliberation. That law does not apply to us, and that's fine. We knew that going into it. So it's really about the personal experience as opposed to the facts and details. Those aren't really important. It's about how can we support you moving forward.
To that point, to perhaps dig a little deeper, is it then anonymous, or do you have to provide information about who you are and where you are and the case you were involved with? I'm curious about that.
So there's no the case is not important. There are a series of questions that and certifications that you have to affirm. So you have to be fully discharged from jury duty. This is a pilot program, so it's only available in the province of British Columbia at this time. So you have to be fully discharged from jury duty. You have to reside in the province of British Columbia. It is anonymous, but we do ask that an active email address be provided because this is virtual peer support. It takes place over a video conferencing service like Zoom. And all of those facets have to be affirmed and certified in order for you to be part of the program. So the trial information is not important. The juror can be anonymous if they request it, but there has to be a valid email address for us to collect and initiate a meeting invite.
Mark Farrant, you've been very public about this, and you're the face of this organization in a lot of ways. You and others who have been fighting this fight for some time. I'm sure you hear from people anyway. I'm sure people ring you up and say, listen, I appreciate what you're doing. Here's my experience.
We hear from jurors all the time, from cases, landmark cases, from cases you probably never heard of, about their service, about their, adjusting back to life is difficult from a long and lengthy trial, and especially a complicated decision that you're responsible for. You feel a sense of ownership around. And stepping out of that vacuum is difficult. That's why part of our pilot also includes a training program that is going to be provided to the BC Sheriff's Service. It's designed to provide the sheriffs with some self-care tools, some resiliency tools, some mental health strategies that can be employed during a trial, and working with jurors, understanding the jury experience and some of what jurors are bringing into court with them to assist them in their role, the jurors in their role, to allow them to continue to do the work that they're doing. It's designed not to be named. It's designed not to be in conflict with the jury's responsibilities and their impartiality. And so those two programs really fit well together, the peer support program after service and this additional support mechanism in court during trial.
It's interesting you mentioned that because the first responder community is starting to become much more tuned into that, and there's this opportunity to build resilience before the trauma. And is there a risk, is there a fear that offering that type of upfront transparency might scare people even more from wanting to be participants? It's already a challenge to get people to agree to jury duty. I'm wondering if trying to at least make them fully aware of what they might experience might even exacerbate that.
I'm hopeful that the work that we're doing in this type of approach really reinforces that jurors' mental health is important, and that this isn't being delivered in using language that further distances the public from wanting to serve. It's an investment in juror mental health, and it's an investment in the justice system, so that the public and anyone receiving a summons feels a little bit better about knowing that there is that level of investment and want to make the experience better. We can't manage, and no one can predict how jury service is going to impact an individual. And for the majority of people, jury service is extremely rewarding. Being called to serve one's community, there is actually a sea change in individuals' perspective too. Once they're seated, once they're involved in the trial, they become very focused, and some of those reservations and misgivings seem to evaporate. But again, this is designed to support you and support the public through this process.
I think you've touched on an answer to this question. Would it be appropriate to say we need professional jurors across Canada? The jurors should have a level of training and expertise, or should it be, because it's been built in our system, that it's the public, that the peers of a community are the ones to make judgment?
And it's definitely the latter. I don't think the professional jurors would just be an extension of the judiciary, really, and that role is established already and has its obviously has its purpose. The right to be tried by an ordinary citizen, a member of your community, a member of the public is part of our democracy. It's part of our criminal code. It's written into our Charter of Rights and Human Freedoms. And again, we need to reinforce that principle and not detract from it.
Right. And as we have modeled our democracy on the Westminster system, you mentioned the UK, the United Kingdom has already taken steps to address some of these issues prior to what Canada has. So maybe there's our bellwether. Our guide should be looking to them for what they're doing. Is there anything that they're doing outside of what we've just discussed that might be even more helpful here?
Well, I think the investments made in the United Kingdom. Again, the defense of the charter and the defense of the practice is something that we can certainly look to maintain and echo. We're in some ways a leader, though, in the reforms in that we've made in terms of jury duty and supporting jurors themselves. We're actually ahead of the United Kingdom in terms of some provinces that have raised jury pay. Jury pay in the United Kingdom is paltry. In some parts of the United Kingdom, it isn't even available. And so we're actually taking a leadership in that area. That's actually something that the United Kingdom is looking to us to improve their system. So, we're complementing one another, and we're getting a lot of visibility in the United States for the work that we're doing, and the interest in the investments that we've made in mental health is certainly being we've caught the attention of numerous states in south of the border.
And I know in previous years you've sent letters to ministers of justice across this country asking for them to review jury pay. I'm curious if you've followed up to write a letter to Nova Scotia's Minister Brad Johns about that.
I believe I wrote a letter in the spring of last year when we released our survey results, which again still show that support for jury duty in Canada is below willingness to donate blood and willingness to volunteer in the community. In fact, those metrics have remained stable over the last 3 years of tracking, and support for volunteering in the community and blood donation has actually increased, where jury duty has remained flat. And the economics of jury duty, the lack of effective jury pay compensating for lost wages and salaries is the top driver for participation in the justice system, and participation rather in jury duty. And certainly this climate that we're living in now with rising inflation, jury pay is worth even less now, because of rising inflation and rising costs. So where many provinces have not adjusted jury pay since the 1990s, that $40 or $30 a day that you receive is barely able to cover your costs of transport in some cases, and it doesn't even fill the gas tank. So it is the catalyst for improving participation. It's also the catalyst for improving representation on juries. If we want to address systemic racism and representation in the justice system, the best means to do that immediately is to raise jury pay to at least be measurable to the minimum wage in the province that you reside in. And then suddenly you're allowing people who've been shut out for economic reasons the ability to afford to serve.
Very important point. The Canadian Juries Commission, there's a website for folks who want to visit, and it's national in scope, but you are looking to expand the peer support. Do you have plans to establish offices in the provinces and territories, or is this something that you can do federally, like in a big picture way?
It will be a national operation for the time being. We would love to open local chapters long term. The program, the peer support program, which we do have designs to nationalize, will be available to all Canadians virtually. There will be locally trained peer supporters in provinces and regions to who have an understanding of the local province and be able to support citizens locally. That's the immediate goal.
And you do get some financial support federally?
We've been very fortunate and very honored to have the financial contribution of support from the Department of Justice Canada, and we've received incredible mentorship and support and encouragement for these two projects. We've also had a great relationship with the Attorney General of British Columbia and the BC Sheriff's Service, who've provided leadership and mentorship for these programs, and that's something we want to take across the country. And again, we see it as a complement and a support to the work that has been doing in each of the provinces now.
The President and CEO of the Canadian Juries Commission. Mark Farrant, thank you again for your information, for the work that you're doing, and for keeping us in the know on this. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure.